Hey folks, and welcome back to the channel. Today, this is actually the third video I've shot, but I am going to sow my fava beans, also called broad beans out of the UK. I think they usually call it broad beans, I think, in the UK. That's actually from where I picked this crop up. Not this bag specifically, but the idea of growing it, because we just don't grow it here in the States, as far as I know, in any great quantities. And prior to growing a few over the last couple of years, I don't think I've ever eaten a fava bean unless it was in a restaurant, then I should know about it. But I think if I want to grow a dried legume, this is a great one to do. The beans are pretty big. They grow in the early to mid to late spring pretty successfully. So by late May, early June, I'll probably be harvesting these off, which is perfect because then I can transition the bed to a summertime crop right after. But I really want to learn dried legumes, and I don't want to go through the smaller ones that have, when you're shelling them by hand, you really don't get much yield. These beans, after harvesting and drying out, is a pretty good sized bean. Now, I know that by reputation you're supposed to shell them before you can actually eat them. I think overseas, in some areas, maybe in the Middle East, they'll actually cook this up straight up as this and eat the whole thing. I'm going to soak some overnight one of these days, throw it in the Instant Pot and see if it actually is edible for me. But yeah, I'm going to have two beds of these. Most of these are actually saved seed from prior year. And yeah, I think they should germinate well enough. What I'll do is I just actually sowed bed 1 and then decided to actually post this up on a video. I'll do bed 2 now, and I'll water them in, and I'll probably do a maybe about 16 to 32 seedlings in a cell tray as backups for anything that doesn't germinate out here, because I saved this seed. I don't know how good it is at this point. It's from last year, so it should be viable from an age standpoint, but whether or not I actually did a good job of timing it off the plant and drying it out properly remains to be seen. So if that's if the case is that the germination isn't great, but it's okay, I'll have some backups to transplant out here. And my spacing is going to be within these beds. I'm going to have 1 foot apart, so I'm going to have 2 rows in each bed, 1 foot apart, and about 1 foot using my hori to measure down. So basically 1 foot in each direction. Yeah, I'm excited for this one. It's fun to actually get things in the ground. It feels pretty warm out here despite the fact that we had an overnight that was really cold. I've got a nice dark planting surface, so it should be able to capture some of the sun, and we're expecting a lot of sun and 60-degree days over the next week or so. We do drop a little bit in a week, maybe for a freeze overnight. These are actually relatively cold hardy. A very, very light 32 overnight shouldn't, if I do have a seedling pop up, shouldn't do much damage. I do have a little bit of floating row cover that I can put over top if I do get a couple of those, and I'm not using it for anything else right now. So to use it on these 2 beds when I get germination, because I'm not going to transplant anything else out here or direct sow anything at the moment, so I can save that row cover just for these specifically. So yeah, let's get going. So that's 4 rows of anywhere between 20 and 25. I didn't count, but I know the beds are usually between 20 and 25 feet in length, and at a 1 foot spread, that would give me about 80 to 100 plants. And I think that's all I'm gonna do for the broad beans this year. My goal for them really is just to learn how to grow them properly and see how they yield. So now I'm gonna go ahead and water those in. And before I do, occasionally I do have pretty good ideas that I think to myself, hey, someone else might do something with this. Those strings that I put in the ground, that I put on the ground, I've got those attached to landscape staples. And what I did was I put landscape staples originally at just past the edge of a bed on either side. I tied the string off, I ran down, I tied it to their side, I cut it off, and I did that with about 8 or 10 of these. And what I do is I keep them kind of stored along the south edge of the fence inside the garden, just in the pathway. And that way, whenever I need to string something out, I can just walk down, pull one of these up, and I've got a 20 to 25 foot string that I can use to set spacing for my seedlings, or if I want to actually reset a bed with compost, I can just take those strings, put it at the edge of each bed, and make sure I measure out side to side, so I have 3 feet on the one side, 3 feet on the other, 3 feet on the middle, and all of a sudden I've got an actual space, as opposed to trying to rely on my eye when I'm trying to drill something straight or set compost in a line. So food for thought, if you don't want to keep taking string out like I used to do. I used to constantly pound stakes in the ground, cut string, and then I wind up throwing it away. I'm not wasting string this way, so I feel this is one of my better ideas, I think. Just like that, we're watered in and ready to go. I'll do probably 2 more days of watering just like that. Just one watering can per row. The ground actually still has a lot of moisture from the rain and snow we've had over the last 2 weeks. So I don't think I have any real issue with them not, soaking up enough moisture to germinate. And we'll probably get another rain within the next 2 weeks. So I'm not really concerned about that. If it does go super hot, super dry all of a sudden, then yeah, I'll water more, but I'm not anticipating needing to do much of that. And now, let's go ahead and get those other seeds and some cell packs so that I have some insurance plants. And come on, I'll show you how I actually do my sifted compost so you can see how I get my seed starting mix. This is just a 1/4 inch welded wire that I attached to these wood strips. And I've had this thing for a few, 5 or 6 years now. I actually built this to sift worm castings when I did some red wiggler growing a few years ago. I stopped doing that project, but I use it now to sift just compost to use for seed starting. And all I do, I've got a Rubbermaid like container, and from nothing more than my compost bin, take that, break it up by hand. And this is a manual process. It's not overly efficient. One day I'll figure out what I want to do more long term, because this is not great for the lower back either, to constantly lean forward. But and you can see through that, this is the material I'm getting. Long strips like that, pop in there, sure. Right back into the pile, no big deal. I'll do a few rounds of this, and then I'll have enough material for, like I said, about 16 to 20 seeds in a tray. So I'll finish this, and we'll get to sowing those. So I've got a web flat, and I've got these 804 cell packs. It's an 804 because it is 8 cells by 4 cells. And I don't know if I'm going to fill all of these up with these, because if with 80 to 100 out there planted, if my germination, let's say it's 100, if I get 70% germination, you know what? Yeah, I'll fill them up. If I actually have enough sifted compost here, I'll just fill them all up. And I can't believe it, but that is actually exactly as much compost as I just sifted. So, yeah, things have a way of working out sometimes. And now, I tried showing the bean seed outside, but I did not have my camera turned around, so I couldn't really see if I had it in frame. But that'll give you an idea of the size. Yeah, we're just gonna pop these guys in. Probably about, I think I'm gonna go close to almost halfway down. They're big seed, and I really want it to I want the shoot system to really have to work through a little bit so it gets rooted nice and deep. I don't like the idea of a real surface planting on something this. I think conventional wisdom says that you should probably sow something about 2 to 3 times the size of a seed is how deep it needs to go. If you go way too deep, the problem is it can still germinate, but by the time the shoot system tries to pop out of the ground so it can grab some sun, it's too late. It can't push through. It needs to be closer to the surface. So if I planted these things, let's say a foot deep, it'll still germinate down there, but it is not making its way out of the soil. But to plant these about, half an inch to an inch down there, they're gonna find their way out. I've done that before with these. Ideally, I would have had a planting vessel that was even deeper than these. I still wouldn't plant it any deeper than about a half an inch to 3/4 of an inch, but I would have a lot more room for the root system. But I do not have anything with that depth right now other than 4-inch squares, and I don't want to commit. That they would take a long time to actually root out in the square. And these will root out in here a lot faster because it's that much less space for it to do so. So by the time these are pretty much rooted out in here, I'll know outside how many of these I'll need to put out there. And that is how I do my seed starting. Because I don't think I've actually had a video where I showed starting seeds yet. Though I have started some seeds already for the spring planting, I didn't shoot anything yet. So this is sort of my inaugural seed starting video, and it's gonna make a monkey out of me if I don't get some good germination, because I know my methods are relatively unconventional, using just sifted homemade compost, but I've done it before in the past, and in doing so I'm able to save money because I'm not bringing in bagged compost. I can use a resource that is absolutely local because it's coming from my own property. And again, all of the sort of energy that gets used to mine compost or create compost for the bagging process and shipped out and all that transport, none of that has to take place. And I do get good enough results in my last few years of doing this to make it worth my while to not bring in bagged compost. So this is not an argument for or against buying ingredients. It's just sort of my philosophy as to why I don't. If I can get success keeping it as local, i.e. my property, I'd rather go that direction. For somebody who's sitting in a neighborhood and they just want to start something in the backyard the way I used to, I didn't have the ability to make large-scale compost to where I could actually use it for seed starting. But when I moved out to this property, that opportunity opened up for me, and I've tried to do a good job of taking advantage of it. So I'm gonna get these watered in, and I think I'm gonna pop them in that my new little greenhouse that I have that I set up for my fig and berry plants. And yeah, we'll see if these guys decide to pop out and see how the garden does. And when they germinate, I will post a follow-up video that shows that. Because I think it's gonna be fun to see the progress the garden's making, and I want to do a good job of documenting for myself the days where I start seeing things happen, so that I have a better understanding of when I'm germinating and when I'm sowing, when things germinate, when they get to full size. And if I do more video logs of that for you on YouTube, it's a good video record for me as well. And just like that, we've got our fava beans started. I'm super excited to see how these go, and in a couple of weeks I'm expecting some germination, and yeah, when that happens, you'll be the first to see it, other than me, of course. So until then, thanks for watching, take care, and I'll see you in the next one.